I never thought a cup of coffee could change the course of my entire life. But that morning, as rain pounded against the windows of a small Seattle cafe, fate was already walking toward me, wearing heels that echoed like distant thunder. I sat in the corner booth with my daughters, trying to stretch $8 into breakfast for 3, pretending I wasn't doing mental math to figure out if we could afford another gallon of milk that week. The screen of my phone glowed faintly on the table beside me, my bank balance blinking under $200, the number feeling more like a countdown than an account. My hands, scarred and rough from years of construction work, trembled slightly as I scrolled through the last few transactions, each one a small wound. Ever since the accident, ever since the day the scaffolding gave way and my back gave out, every dollar had become a battle, every grocery run a negotiation with survival. Outside, Seattle's rain fell in sheets, turning the street into a blurred watercolor of umbrellas and passing headlights. Inside, the smell of roasted coffee beans and cinnamon pastries filled the air, a cruel kind of warmth that reminded me of the life I used to have before everything fell apart. Lily, my 8-year-old, pressed her nose against the glass display, her small breath fogging the glass as she stared at a chocolate muffin bigger than her hand. Beside her, Emma tugged gently at my jacket sleeve, her 6-year-old voice soft and hopeful as she pointed at the rainbow-sprinkled cookies stacked neatly behind the counter. "Daddy, can we get one?" she asked. The words were innocent, light, but they hit me like a punch to the chest. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Maybe next time, sweetheart," I said quietly, the lie heavy on my tongue. They didn't see the truth behind my calm voice, the gnawing fear that next time might not come if things didn't change soon. For months, we'd been surviving on generic cereal and peanut butter sandwiches, each meal a reminder that I was failing at being both father and mother. Rebecca, their mother, had died 4 years earlier, and every day since had felt like a slow war I was losing one bill at a time. The bell above the cafe door jingled, and a rush of cold air followed the sound of sharp, confident footsteps. I didn't look up right away, but the sudden hush that spread across the small shop made me glance instinctively toward the entrance. She stood there, tall, poised, wrapped in an elegant charcoal suit that looked like it belonged on the cover of a business magazine. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her expression calm, her presence commanding without being loud. The barista straightened automatically, as if some unspoken authority had just entered the room. I looked away, assuming she was one of those people whose world never collided with mine, the kind of woman who parked luxury cars in heated garages and never worried about rent. But then her heels clicked closer, stopping right beside our table. "Mr. Chen?" Her voice was low, professional, carrying a confidence that made me straighten instinctively. "Yes?" I said cautiously. My daughters looked up at her with curious eyes, sensing something unusual. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, smiling in a way that felt rehearsed but not cruel. "My name is Victoria Blackwood. I couldn't help but notice you and your daughters." I frowned, unsure how to respond. "We're fine, thank you," I said quickly, pulling the girls a little closer. Her smile deepened slightly, but her tone softened. "I'm not here to intrude, Mr. Chen. I'm here because of you. I've been looking for you." The air seemed to thicken. I blinked, confused. "Looking for me? Lady, I think you've got the wrong—" "No," she interrupted gently. "You're Marcus Chen, 34 years old, former construction foreman, 2 daughters, Lily and Emma, out of work for 8 months since your accident at the Morrison site." Her voice carried no judgment, only precision. "You're 3 months behind on rent. You've sold nearly everything of value to keep food on the table." I felt heat flood my face. Not anger yet, but humiliation so sharp it stung. "How do you know all that?" Victoria glanced briefly at my daughters, who were watching her now with wide, uncertain eyes. Then she looked back at me, her expression softening into something almost maternal. "Because, Mr. Chen," she said quietly, I make it my business to know about people who matter." The words didn't make sense. To anyone else, I was invisible, a broken man fading into the cracks of a city too busy to notice him. "You've got the wrong guy," I muttered, pushing my chair back, but she was already reaching into her briefcase. She withdrew a sleek tablet, turned it toward me, and tapped the screen. The image that appeared froze the air in my lungs. It was me, 20 years younger, covered in dust and blood, wearing desert fatigues, standing beside a burning Humvee. My hand was gripping the shoulder of a fellow soldier, and beside us, half obscured by smoke, was a young woman in uniform. "Operation Enduring Freedom," Victoria said softly. "Afghanistan. You saved my daughter's life that day." My body went still, every sound in the coffee shop fading until all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears. The memory hit like a thunderclap. The explosion, the screaming, the searing heat of metal, and the young woman pinned beneath the wreckage. I could still smell the diesel fuel and hear the gunfire echoing through the dust-filled sky. I remembered pulling her free, my hands blistering as I dragged her to safety. "Sarah Morrison," I whispered, the name rising from the ashes of memory like a ghost. Victoria's composure cracked for the first time, her blue eyes bright with emotion. "She made it home because of you, Mr. Chen. She lived a beautiful life. She got married, started a family." Her voice faltered. "And then she died 3 years ago in a car accident." The words hit harder than I expected. Around us, the cafe carried on. The hiss of the espresso machine, the quiet murmur of other patrons. But in that small corner, time had stopped. My daughters sat silent now, sensing that whatever this woman was saying mattered more than they could understand. Victoria took a slow breath, steadying herself, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed. The business-like cadence was gone. In its place was something fragile and deeply human. "Before Sarah died," she said softly, leaning closer across the table, "she made me promise something." I met her gaze, unsure if I wanted to hear the rest. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded them on the table between us. She said, "Find Marcus Chen, the man who gave me my life. Make sure he's taking care of the way he took care of me." My throat tightened, my pulse quickened. I stared at her, at the sincerity in her eyes, at the impossible truth in her words. The world outside the window was still raining, but inside, something else was breaking open, something I didn't yet have the courage to name. Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper, trembling but sure. "Before Sarah died, she made me promise to find you. She said her daughter's dying wish was about me, a man she barely knew." Those words echoed in my head long after Victoria spoke them, looping in disbelief, as though my mind refused to translate what my ears had heard. Across the coffee shop table, her elegant composure contrasted with the storm unraveling inside me. My palms felt clammy, my throat dry, and in the reflection of the rain-streaked window, I could almost see the ghost of my younger self, the soldier I used to be before the accident, before the war changed what the word alive meant. The moment she said Afghanistan, something inside me cracked open. My memory dragged me backward 20 years, into the brutal sunlight of that desert, to a place that still smelled of dust, smoke, and blood. The roar of the explosion filled my mind as clearly as if it had just happened. The Humvee had hit the IED seconds after we cleared the ridge. One moment we were laughing, trading jokes about the heat, and the next the air was filled with fire. I remembered sprinting toward the burning vehicle, hearing the screams, and the rational part of me shouting to stay back. But the training never mattered when someone was dying within reach. She was trapped beneath twisted steel, her uniform torn, her eyes wide with terror and disbelief. The fire had already reached the ammunition compartment, rounds cooking off like fireworks. I could still hear her voice, hoarse with pain, saying, "Leave me, it's going to blow." But I couldn't. I wrapped my arms around her shoulders, ignoring the searing heat biting through, my gloves, and dragged with everything I had left. I remember the smell of my own flesh burning, the grit in my teeth, and then, mercifully, the sound of other hands pulling her free. After that, I woke up in a field tent 3 days later, my palms bandaged, my lungs full of smoke. They told me I'd saved 3 lives that day. I never learned their names. Until now. When I blinked back to the present, Victoria was still watching me, her blue eyes glistening with restrained emotion. Sarah talked about that day often, she said quietly. She said she owed you her whole life. When she came home, she wanted to find you, to thank you, but she couldn't track you down. She joined the army at 19. You were discharged, moved cities, changed jobs, and then time passed. But she never forgot. Her voice broke slightly, and she pressed her lips together to regain control. She died in a car crash 3 years ago. It was instant. But before she went, she left me with a mission. She said, "If anything ever happens to me, find Marcus Chen, the man who pulled me out of hell. Make sure he's okay." I didn't know what to say. Grief and confusion tangled inside me until they felt the same. I'd never heard of a promise like that. One made in war, paid in death, collected decades later. "You're telling me your daughter, a woman I met for maybe an hour, thought about me on her deathbed?" Victoria nodded slowly. She wasn't dramatic, Marcus. Sarah meant every word she ever said. I think she recognized something in you that day, the way you refused to walk away. She used to tell me that courage like that leaves a mark on a soul. I exhaled shakily, staring down at my scarred hands. The burns had healed, but my fingers still felt stiff on cold mornings, a daily reminder of the day I'd almost died pulling strangers from fire. "She lived a full life?" I asked finally. "She did," Victoria said. "She married, had a son, built a career in veterans outreach. She was strong, funny, stubborn, and too brave for her own good. Losing her." Her voice faltered, and for the first time, the veneer of the powerful businesswoman slipped away. "I raised her from the time she was 12, after her mother died. She was my heart, Mr. Chen. And when she was gone, there was nothing left to hold on to, except her words. The cafe noise blurred around us, the low hum of conversations, the hiss of the espresso machine, the muffled footsteps on the rain-wet floor. My daughters were still sitting beside me, wide-eyed, pretending not to listen, but their small hands had gone still on the table. Lily's gaze darted between me and Victoria, curiosity shadowed by confusion. Emma leaned against my arm, whispering, "Daddy, is the lady sad?" I swallowed hard and nodded faintly. "Yeah, sweetheart. She is." Victoria wiped her eyes discreetly, her control returning like a mask settling back into place. "I've spent the last 3 years trying to find you. It wasn't easy. Your service records were partially sealed, and after your accident you disappeared from public databases. I only found you because one of my charity foundations works with disabled veterans. When your name came across my desk, I knew it was her Marcus." Her Marcus. The phrase startled me, stirring something uncomfortable. Guilt, perhaps, or the uneasy sense that I'd become part of someone else's unfinished story. "Why find me now?" I asked. "Sarah's gone. Whatever debt you think you owe me—" "This isn't about debt," she cut in, her voice firm again. "It's about keeping a promise. Sarah asked me to make sure you were taken care of. To make sure you were safe." I let out a hollow laugh. "Safe? Miss Blackwood, I'm a 34-year-old crippled single father with 2 kids and a bank account that looks like a bad joke. Safety left the building a long time ago." Her expression didn't waver. "Then maybe it's time someone brought it back." The way she said it, not with pity but with conviction, made me look at her differently. Beneath the power suit and the polish, there was something raw in her eyes, something that mirrored the emptiness I carried every night when my daughters were asleep and the silence pressed too close. 2 different worlds, yet the same kind of loneliness. Still, A lifetime of hard knocks had taught me that nothing came without strings. "You don't even know me," I said finally. "For all you know, I could be a complete disaster." A faint smile curved her lips. "Mr. Chen, I know more about you than you think. I know how many job applications you've sent. I know the names of the employers who turned you down. I know how many times you've paid rent late. And I know that despite everything, you've never given up. That's why I'm here. Because my daughter believed in the kind of man who runs toward fire instead of away from it." The intensity in her gaze made me uncomfortable. People didn't look at me like that anymore. Not since Rebecca died. Most saw a man beaten down by life, surviving out of habit, not conviction. But Victoria looked at me as if she saw the soldier still buried under the rubble. Lily shifted in her seat, whispering, "Daddy, are we okay?" Her little hand slipped into mine, grounding me. I looked at her, then at Emma, who was watching Victoria with cautious fascination. Two pairs of eyes filled with innocent faith, the kind of trust I didn't deserve but lived for. Victoria followed my gaze, her expression softening. "They're beautiful," she said quietly. "You've done well by them, Marcus. But you shouldn't have to do it alone." The words hung between us like a spark before a storm. I felt a strange pull, suspicion and gratitude, fear and curiosity tangled into one impossible knot. Then she reached into her briefcase again, withdrawing a thick envelope sealed with deep red wax. The seal bore an intricate B pressed into it like an insignia of power and secrets. She set it on the table between us, her manicured fingers resting lightly on top. "Inside," she said, "is something I've been preparing since the day I found you. It's an opportunity, but it comes with conditions." I stared at the envelope, half expecting it to explode, my pulse thudding in my ears. "What kind of opportunity?" Victoria's eyes held mine, steady, unreadable. "One that will change everything for you and your daughters." She slid the envelope toward me, her voice dropping to a whisper that sent a shiver down my spine. "I have a proposition for you, Mr. Chen, one that will change everything." Her offer sounded insane. Marry her, and she'd help raise my daughters. When Victoria first said she had a proposition, I imagined maybe a job, a charity offer, something that would sting my pride but ease my desperation. I never expected the kind of proposal that would shatter every rule of what I thought life and love were supposed to be. "Let's talk somewhere private," she'd said, her tone calm but unyielding, like someone used to being obeyed. My daughters watched her curiously, sensing something powerful in this elegant stranger. Every instinct in me screamed, "Don't go," yet something in her voice, a quiet certainty, made it impossible to refuse. Outside, her driver stood beside a sleek black Mercedes, polished to the kind of shine that reflected your whole life back at you. Rain streaked the tinted windows, and for a moment I saw my reflection. A man worn down by too many years of trying, standing beside two little girls who still believed in miracles. "Daddy, can we go?" Lily asked, her small hand tugging at mine. I looked down at her hopeful eyes and realized I didn't have the strength to say no. Victoria gestured gracefully toward the car. "Please, I promise you, Mr. Chen, no tricks. I just want to talk." So we went. As the city blurred by outside, my daughters pressed their faces to the windows, whispering in awe at the glittering skyline. For them, this was an adventure, a ride in a car that didn't smell like old engine oil or stale air. For me, it was a slow drive into uncertainty. I sat stiffly beside Victoria, trying not to notice the scent of her perfume. Expensive, understated, like everything about her. "You said your name's Blackwood?" I asked cautiously, breaking the silence. "Victoria Blackwood," she replied, "CEO of Blackwood Industries." The name hit me like a quiet thunderclap. I'd seen it before. On billboards, skyscrapers, even on a donation plaque at the children's hospital where Emma had once been treated. This wasn't just some wealthy widow with a soft spot for veterans. This was Victoria Blackwood, one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country. The car glided through the heart of downtown Seattle and stopped in front of a towering glass structure that pierced the clouds like a blade. Blackwood Industries gleamed across the entrance in bold silver letters. My daughters gasped. "Daddy, it's so tall," Emma whispered, craning her neck. "Welcome," Victoria said, smiling faintly. "This is where I've built my life." Inside, the lobby was marble and silence, the kind that felt like a cathedral for money. Receptionists stood at attention. Security guards nodded as Victoria passed. The world bent slightly around her presence. My daughters clung to me, their small sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. In the elevator, she finally spoke again. "I'm not trying to impress you, Marcus. I just need you to see where I come from, before you understand what I'm offering." We stepped into her corner office on the 38th floor, and for a moment, the view stole my breath. Seattle stretched endlessly below, the rain softening the city lights into a hazy glow. Her office was large, but not cold. Wood, leather, framed photographs of a life lived in motion. She gestured toward the chairs by the window. "Please, sit." While my daughters explored quietly, marveling at the view, Victoria poured 2 cups of coffee from a sleek machine that looked like it cost more than my truck. Her movements were graceful, deliberate, practiced. "Mr. Chen," she began, setting a cup before me, "I built this company from nothing. My first husband died young, and I spent the next 30 years turning loss into purpose. I've earned more money than I could ever spend, but I've also spent it alone. When Sarah died, I lost the only family I had." Her voice softened. "I've donated millions, built schools, hospitals, all good things, but none of it fills the silence of an empty house. And then, when I found you, the man who gave my daughter her life, I saw something I hadn't felt in years. Possibility." I didn't know what to say. Her confession felt too heavy, too personal, to belong in a skyscraper built on steel and profit. She continued, her gaze unwavering. "You have what I don't, Marcus. You have family, love, a reason to wake up every morning, and yet you're drowning, struggling to give your daughters what they deserve." My throat tightened. Hearing my reality spoken so plainly by a stranger was both humiliating and hauntingly accurate. "I have money but no family," she said finally. "You have family but no money. Maybe we can save each other." I blinked, unsure I'd heard her right. "Save each other?" She smiled faintly. "Yes. I'm 62 years old, Mr. Chen. I've built empires and lost them, buried my husband and my daughter. I've lived long enough to know that legacy isn't built in stock prices or board meetings. It's built in people, in love, even the unconventional kind." Her tone shifted, calm, almost businesslike again. "So here's my proposition. I want you to marry me." The words hit harder than any explosion I'd faced in combat. For a moment, I actually laughed, the kind of disbelieving laugh that comes when your brain refuses to process the impossible. "You can't be serious," I managed, my voice trembling. But she didn't flinch. "Completely serious," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "Marry me, and I'll help you raise your daughters. They'll have the best education, the best home, the kind of life you want for them but can't give alone. You'll never worry about rent again, or about putting food on the table." My mind spun. Every word she said sounded like a dream, or a trap. "You're talking about a business deal, not a marriage." Victoria nodded once. "At first, perhaps, but partnerships come in many forms. I don't need romance, Marcus. I need a family, and I believe you need a partner." Her calm certainty terrified me more than any battlefield ever had. Through the glass wall, I saw my daughters playing near her assistant's desk, their laughter echoing faintly through the room, the sound of innocence unaware of the deal being discussed over their heads. "Why me?" I asked softly. Victoria looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Because my daughter believed you were the kind of man who would never stop fighting for the people he loved." And she was right. The room fell silent again. The rain outside had eased, leaving streaks of water glistening on the glass like tears. I stared down at my scarred hands, then at the woman across from me, powerful, grieving, unshakably composed. And for the first time, I had no idea whether to be afraid of her or grateful. Finally, I whispered the only words that made sense. "You can't be serious." Victoria leaned forward, her expression unwavering, her voice steady as stone. "I've never been more serious in my life." Her words hung in the air, a promise, a challenge, and perhaps the beginning of something neither of us truly understood. She didn't want romance. She wanted a family. Victoria's words still echoed in my mind long after she said them. "Marry me, and I'll help you raise your daughters." At first, it had sounded like madness, the kind of offer people make in dreams or desperate movies. But now, sitting across from her in that glass-walled office high above Seattle, I realized she wasn't joking. She wasn't impulsive. Every word she spoke had been deliberate, calculated, and terrifyingly sincere. Victoria leaned back slightly, her posture regal yet vulnerable, the skyline of her empire glowing behind her. "I'm not asking for love, Marcus," she said, her voice calm and low, almost tender. "This isn't about passion or attraction. I'm offering a partnership, a way for both of us to fill the voids that life has left behind." I could hear my daughter's laughter faintly from the other room where her assistant was keeping them entertained. The sound should have comforted me, but instead it made my chest ache. "You're asking me to marry a stranger," I said, forcing the words out, "just to fix what's broken in our lives." She smiled sadly. "I'm asking you to build something new from what's left of them." Victoria stood and walked to the window, her reflection blurring against the city lights. "I'm 62 years old," she continued quietly. "I've buried a husband, lost my daughter, and outlived nearly everyone I ever loved. I've built fortunes, Mr. Chen, but not a single person who would care if I didn't come home one night. I have houses that echo with silence. I have everything, except someone to share it with." She turned then, her expression stripped of all pretense. "I don't want to die alone, Marcus." The words hit harder than I expected. There was no manipulation in her tone, no drama, just the raw, simple truth of a human being admitting she was lonely. I swallowed hard. "You think marrying me would change that?" "I think," she said softly, "that being part of a family again would." The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. Instead, I looked at her, really looked at her. The lines around her eyes weren't just from age, but from years of holding herself together. Her hands, manicured and strong, trembled slightly as she spoke. For the first time, I saw not the billionaire, but the woman underneath, the mother who had buried her child and refused to let that be the end of her story. She walked back to the table and sat across from me again. "You've been alone for a long time too, haven't you?" Her question cut through me. I thought of Rebecca, my wife, gone 4 years now. Her laughter, her scent, her warmth still haunted our small apartment like a gentle ghost. "Since my wife passed," I said quietly, "I've been managing." Victoria nodded knowingly. "Managing is just another word for surviving. You've done it well, but you shouldn't have to anymore." I wanted to argue, to tell her that I could handle it, that I didn't need rescuing. But the truth was right there on my hands, calloused, scarred, shaking slightly from the constant weight of holding everything together. "And the girls?" I asked finally. "You're saying you'd take them in too?" "They'd be my daughters," she said without hesitation. "They'd have everything, the best education, medical care, safety, opportunities you could only dream of giving them." I felt the word everything echo through me like a promise and a threat all at once. "And what about me? What do you expect from me in return? Honesty? Partnership? Stability?" Her tone softened. "We'd live together, raise the girls together, and build a home. Separate bedrooms, separate lives, unless that ever changes naturally." I Don't want your love out of obligation. I just want your presence, your reliability, your heart as a father." It was the most practical, emotionless way anyone had ever described marriage to me. And yet, somehow, it made sense. Two people broken in different ways, trying to fit the shattered pieces into something that could still hold light. But the guilt came next, sharp and immediate. Rebecca. What would she think if she saw me sitting here considering this? Would she see a man doing what he had to for his daughters, or a man giving up on the life they'd built together? "Rebecca," I whispered under my breath, not realizing I'd said her name aloud. Victoria tilted her head. "Your wife?" I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "She died of cancer. 4 years ago." Victoria's expression softened even further. "Then you've already kept one promise, Marcus. You raised those girls alone. You fought for them when you had nothing left to give. But maybe now it's time to make a new promise, one that gives you a chance to live again." The thought twisted inside me. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't beautiful. It was survival. But then again, wasn't that what all of life really was? Survival, disguised as choice? That night, I lay awake in our cramped apartment, the ceiling cracked, the air cold. The girls slept in the living room, curled up on the pull-out couch, their soft breathing the only sound in the darkness. On the nightstand beside me sat a stack of unpaid bills, rent overdue, electricity notice, medical balance for Emma's last hospital visit. I picked up the framed photograph of Rebecca, her smile frozen in sunlight. My thumb brushed over her cheek in the glass. "What should I do, Becca?" I whispered. "Would you hate me for this? Or would you tell me to take it? For them." The silence didn't answer, but deep down, I knew. Rebecca had always been the practical one. She would have told me to stop being proud and start being smart. She would have said, "Take care of our babies, whatever it takes." When morning came, I tried to shake the thought away. I made breakfast, packed the girls' lunches, went through the motions of another day. But everything felt heavier, as if the walls were closing in. By the afternoon, the sound of mail sliding through the door made my stomach twist. I opened the envelope and froze. It was an eviction notice. Final warning. Pay by Friday or vacate the premises. The letters blurred as my eyes burned. I sank into the nearest chair, the paper trembling in my hands. The girls were playing in the other room, laughing, unaware that the ground beneath our feet was already giving way. That was the moment I stopped fighting it. Maybe pride had kept me alive, but it wasn't going to keep a roof over my daughters' heads. I reached for my phone. My thumb hovered over Victoria's number for a long moment before I finally typed the words. "Let's discuss terms." The message sent with a quiet whoosh. I stared at the screen, half expecting regret to hit immediately. But instead, I felt something else, a strange, fragile sense of calm. A minute later, my phone buzzed. "Victoria, tomorrow night. Bring the girls." I exhaled slowly, staring at the glowing message. There was no turning back now. Tomorrow, I was walking my daughters into a stranger's mansion, and maybe into the rest of our lives. Her mansion didn't feel like money. It felt like hope. When the black sedan turned into the circular driveway of Victoria's home in Queen Anne, I expected something cold, marble, and lifeless. A rich woman's fortress filled with art she didn't look at and rooms she didn't live in. Instead, what I saw was a house that looked like it had been built to hold memories. Ivy curled up its brick walls, flowers spilled from window boxes, and the golden glow of lamps shimmered through rain-speckled glass. It looked alive. From the back seat, Lily pressed her face to the window. "Daddy, it looks like a castle," she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Beside her, Emma giggled, bouncing with excitement. I felt my chest tighten, not from pain this time, but from something closer to gratitude. The front door opened before we could even knock. Victoria stood there, not in her sharp charcoal suit, but in dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater, her silver hair pulled into a simple ponytail. She looked softer, warmer, like someone shedding a lifetime of armor. "Welcome," she said, her smile genuine. Then, kneeling to the girl's level, she added, "You must be Lily and Emma. I've been looking forward to meeting you properly." Lily hesitated, clutching my sleeve. But Emma, ever the brave one, took a step forward. "Are you the fancy lady who helps people?" Victoria laughed, a sound that surprised even her. "Sometimes, but tonight I'm just someone who really hopes you like spaghetti and meatballs." The moment broke the tension. The girls smiled, and just like that, the ice melted. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and lemon polish, a strange but comforting combination. A fire crackled in the living room, its light dancing across rows of framed photographs, family, travels, and one that caught my eye immediately. A young woman in army fatigues smiling at the camera, her arm slung around another soldier. Sarah. Before I could dwell on it, 2 golden retrievers padded into the room, tails wagging like flags of pure joy. "Dogs!" Lily squealed. "This is Fitzgerald," Victoria said, pointing to the older of the 2. "And that's Gatsby. They're good boys, but they think they own the house." Within seconds, my daughters were on the floor, giggling as the retrievers smothered them with affection. For the first time in months, I heard laughter that didn't sound forced. Victoria watched them, her smile soft. "They remind me of Sarah," she said quietly. "She loved dogs. Always said a house doesn't feel like home until there's fur on the couch." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. "Come," she said, turning toward the grand staircase. "There's something I want to show you." Upstairs, she opened the first door on the right. "For Lily," she said. The room looked like something out of a storybook. Soft lavender walls, a canopy bed draped with fairy lights, and bookshelves lined with novels and art supplies. A framed poster above the desk read, "Dream big, little one." Lily stepped inside slowly, eyes wide, as though afraid touching anything would make it vanish. "This is for me?" she whispered. "If you want it to be," Victoria said. Next, she opened the room across the hall. Sunshine yellow walls, twin beds, stuffed animals, and a small play area filled with puzzles and coloring books. "And this one's for Emma," Emma gasped. "You even have my favorite crayons," she said, pointing to the table. Victoria smiled. "Mrs. Patterson, my assistant, helped me guess what you might like. Did I get it right?" Both girls nodded furiously. I stood in the doorway, speechless. The attention to detail was overwhelming, not just generosity, but thoughtfulness. Every corner of the room spoke of care. "This is—" my voice cracked. "You didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to," she replied simply. "I wanted them to see that this could be their home if you decide to accept my offer." Her words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Home. Not shelter, not survival. Home. I hadn't dared dream of one in years. Downstairs, dinner was waiting. Candlelight, soft music, plates of pasta steaming on the table. The girls dug in eagerly, and for the first time in what felt like forever, we ate without worry. No counting dollars, no guilt, no silence heavy with exhaustion. Victoria told stories about her travels, dinners with diplomats, safaris in Kenya, boardroom battles that turned into friendships. She didn't talk like a CEO tonight. She talked like someone remembering that life wasn't meant to be measured in quarterly reports. My daughters listened, wide-eyed, laughing at her stories about getting chased by a goat in Morocco. I watched her, this woman who had seemed like a machine of power when we met, laughing, leaning forward to listen to Emma's story about her school play. It didn't feel like charity. It felt like connection. After dinner, we moved to the living room. The fire burned low, shadows flickering across the walls. Lily and Emma played with Fitzgerald and Gatsby near the hearth, their giggles filling the house like music. Victoria poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one. "To new beginnings," she said softly. I hesitated before clinking my glass against hers. "To second chances." We drank in silence for a moment. The warmth of the wine matched the fire's glow. No, she said finally. When I first started looking for you, I told myself it was about Sarah, about finishing what she asked of me. But it's more than that now. I turned to her, curious. I see how your daughters look at you, she continued. How much they trust you, how much they believe in you even when you don't. That's what I miss most, being someone's safe place. She glanced towards the girls, her voice trembling slightly. This isn't charity, Marcus. This is partnership. We save each other. The phrase caught me off guard. Partnership. It sounded clinical, yet the way she said it carried something almost sacred. I looked toward the fireplace, at my daughters wrapped in blankets, their faces glowing with happiness I hadn't seen in so long. Lily whispered something to Emma, and they both burst into laughter. Pure, unguarded joy. I turned back to Victoria. You said this isn't charity, I said slowly. That it's partnership. She nodded once, her expression calm but expectant. Then I need to understand, I said, my voice steady now. What are your terms? Victoria smiled faintly, her blue eyes glinting in the firelight. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd ask. 3 weeks later, I married a stranger to save my family. The morning of the wedding felt nothing like I'd imagined marriage would feel. There was no orchestra swelling in the distance, no trembling excitement in my chest, only a quiet sense of inevitability. Outside, the Seattle sky was the color of soft silver, the kind of day that could turn to rain or sunshine, depending on which way the wind shifted. It felt fitting. Victoria had planned everything with her usual precision, simple, tasteful, private, no press, no spectacle. Just a handful of people, a small ceremony in her garden, and a promise that this wasn't charity or pity. It was partnership. A deal between two souls who had learned the hard way that survival sometimes looks nothing like romance. Jenny, my younger sister, arrived early that morning, driving up from Portland. She was still in her teaching clothes, neat, modest, and a little wrinkled from the drive. When she stepped into the foyer of Victoria's Tudor home, her eyes went wide. Marcus, she whispered, looking around at the polished wood floors, the grand staircase, the chandeliers that cast warm light instead of harsh glare. This place is... I know, I said quietly. It's a lot. She turned to me then, her eyes full of the kind of worry only family can give. You don't have to do this, you know. You could come stay with us. Dave and I would make room for the girls. It'd be tight, but... I stopped her gently. Jenny, this isn't a sacrifice. It's an opportunity. Her expression softened, but didn't lose its concern. You really believe that? I looked toward the window, where Lily and Emma were running through the garden, giggling, as Victoria's golden retrievers chased them. Yeah, I said finally. For the first time in a long time, I do. The ceremony was set for the afternoon, in the garden beneath an arbor of climbing roses. Victoria's staff had transformed the space into something intimate and elegant. White chairs, a single table draped in lace, and enough flowers to make the air smell like spring despite the chill. When I looked at myself in the mirror, dressed in the gray suit Victoria had insisted on buying me, I almost didn't recognize the man staring back. The suit fit perfectly, tailored to hide the slight bend in my posture left from the accident. I looked older, steadier, like someone who might finally be winning instead of just surviving. The knock at the door came softly. Come in, I said. Jenny peeked inside, her eyes already glassy. You clean up nice, big brother. I tried to smile. Guess miracles happen. She stepped closer, straightening my tie like she used to before school dances. Are you nervous? Not really, I admitted. Just aware. Of what? That this isn't how love stories are supposed to begin. Jenny tilted her head. Who says it can't still become one? Before I could answer, the garden music started, gentle piano notes drifting through the open window. Jenny squeezed my hand once before leaving to join the small gathering outside. The scene was both surreal and heartbreakingly simple. Mrs. Patterson stood beside the judge, serving as a witness. The girls were dressed in soft pastel dresses, each holding a basket of rose petals. Victoria stood at the far end of the garden path, framed by sunlight filtering through the leaves. She wore an ivory dress, elegant but understated, and around her neck hung a single strand of pearls that caught the light when she moved. As I walked toward her, the girls tossed petals ahead of me, laughing. For a moment, I caught Victoria's eyes, and she smiled, not the sharp, corporate smile she wore in boardrooms, but something gentler, vulnerable. The judge, an old friend of Victoria's, began the ceremony without preamble. "Marriage," he said, "isn't always born of love. Sometimes it's born of purpose, of two people choosing to build something steady in an unsteady world." I listened, the words sinking in deeper than I expected. Choosing to build something steady, that's what this was. Not passion, not fantasy. Choice. When it came time for vows, Victoria spoke first. "Marcus," she began, her voice steady but soft, "I promise to be your partner in raising these two beautiful girls. I promise to respect your past, to honor the woman who gave them life, and to help you build a future that's worthy of them. I don't promise love, not yet, but I do promise loyalty, patience, and purpose." Her words weren't romantic, but they were real, the kind of promise forged by grief and courage, not illusion. I took a slow breath before speaking mine. "Victoria," I said, my voice rougher than I intended, "I promise to be your partner in creating the family you've been searching for. I promise to teach your home laughter again, to fill the silence with life. I'll honor what we've lost and fight for what we can still build." For a moment, the world felt suspended, as if even the wind held its breath. Then, the judge smiled. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Victoria turned toward me, her eyes glistening, and pressed a gentle kiss to my cheek, a gesture more symbolic than romantic, but warm all the same. The girls clapped and cheered, running to wrap their arms around us both. "We're a family now!" Emma squealed, her joy pure and unfiltered. And for one fragile moment, I believed her. Standing there in that garden surrounded by laughter, sunlight, and the faint scent of roses, it did feel real. Like maybe, just maybe, we had rewritten the meaning of love itself. That night, when the house was quiet, I walked past the girls' new bedrooms, pausing at their doorways. They were asleep already, their faces soft and peaceful beneath blankets that no longer smelled of damp apartments, but of lavender and clean linen. As I turned to head to my own room, I heard it, Victoria's voice, faint through the baby monitor she'd insisted on keeping in the hall. She was reading to them. Her voice, smooth and patient, carried the rhythm of bedtime stories and love unspoken. And the little bird realized that even broken wings can still fly again. I leaned against the wall, eyes closed, listening. For the first time in years, my daughters weren't falling asleep to worry. They were falling asleep to someone's voice. And for reasons I couldn't explain, that sound felt dangerously close to love. We weren't in love, but somehow it started to feel like family. It's strange how quickly the extraordinary can become ordinary. 1 month you're a single father fighting eviction, and the next you're living in a house with fireplaces in every room, a stocked pantry, and someone who insists on making you sit down for breakfast. The transition should have felt like culture shock. Instead, it felt like recovery. 3 months after the wedding, the rhythm of our new life had settled into something that looked suspiciously like happiness. The girls had adjusted faster than I ever could have imagined. They loved their new rooms, their school, their piano lessons, and most of all, Victoria. She had surprised me in every way possible. The woman who once seemed carved from marble now knelt on the kitchen floor with flour on her hands, helping Emma cut cookie shapes. She laughed easily, a sound I'd rarely heard from her before. When Lily struggled with math, Victoria sat with her for hours, patient and gentle, explaining each step until understanding bloomed across my daughter's face. One afternoon, I came home from physical therapy to find them all in the living room. Victoria sat at the piano beside Lily, playing a soft melody while Emma danced barefoot on the rug, twirling in time with the music. The sight stopped me in the doorway. For the first time since Rebecca's death, my daughters looked like little girls again. Carefree, safe, unburdened. Victoria glanced up and smiled when she saw me. "You're just in time for our concert," she said. I grinned, leaning against the doorframe. "Do I need tickets for this one?" Emma giggled. "You just have to clap really loud." It was a simple moment, but it hit me harder than any grand gesture could. For months, I'd been so focused on survival that I'd forgotten what it felt like to live, to laugh without counting the cost. My back was improving too. Physical therapy was slow, grueling work, but Victoria had spared no expense to make sure I had the best care. When I complained about her paying for it, she'd simply said, "A partnership means investing in each other." She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Our dinners became sacred. Every evening, we sat together. No phones, no distractions. Sometimes we laughed until tears rolled down our cheeks. Other times we just listened to the girls chatter about their day. And after they went to bed, the silence between us felt easy, comfortable. That was when I started to notice the smaller things. How she always waited until everyone else was served before eating. How she softened her business-like voice when speaking to the girls. How she'd stop in the hallway to adjust a crooked picture frame or pick up a stray toy. I also started to notice how the house no longer felt like hers. It felt like ours. We were becoming a family, though neither of us dared to say it out loud. It wasn't love, not yet, but something sturdier, built on trust and respect. She'd saved me from drowning, and somehow, without realizing it, I'd become her anchor too. One rainy evening in early spring, we sat in the sunroom while the girls watched a movie upstairs. The rain drummed softly on the glass roof, and a gentle fire crackled nearby. Victoria was reading, glasses perched low on her nose, her silver hair loose around her shoulders. It was the first time I'd seen her like that, unguarded, almost serene. "You look different," I said quietly. She looked up, amused. "Older?" "Peaceful." For a long moment she didn't reply. Then she set her book down and said, "I suppose I am. I haven't felt this—" She paused, searching for the word. "Settled in years." There was a comfort in her honesty, the kind that didn't need embellishment. Later that night, when I checked on the girls, I found them both asleep in the same bed, arms tangled together, smiling in their dreams. I stood there for a while, just watching them breathe, the weight of gratitude pressing hard against my chest. When I turned, Victoria was standing in the hallway watching me. She didn't say anything, just smiled softly. That quiet, knowing kind of smile that only someone who understands your heart can give. We walked downstairs together, the house wrapped in silence, except for the steady hum of the rain. In the living room, the fire had dimmed to embers. Victoria poured 2 cups of tea and handed me one. "You ever think about Sarah?" I asked. Her hand paused mid-motion. "Every day," she said softly. "I've been thinking," I continued, staring into the fire, "about what she said, about how her dying wish was to find me. It's surreal, the way she's still part of this, even now." Victoria nodded, her eyes reflecting the flicker of the flames. "Sarah always believed things happened for a reason. Maybe this, all of this, is her final act of grace." The room felt heavier, quieter. I sipped my tea and stared at the window where the rain streaked like tears. "I think," I said slowly, "we should visit her grave." Victoria looked up, startled. "The woman who brought us together," I said. "The one who gave you this promise, and me this second chance. We should thank her." Victoria's eyes softened with something that looked like both sorrow and relief. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then, quietly, she whispered, "I'd like that very much." That night, as I turned off the lights, I couldn't shake the feeling that visiting Sarah's grave wouldn't just be a tribute. It would change everything we thought we knew about what bound us together. Our marriage started as a deal, but feelings have a way of rewriting contracts. For months, Victoria and I had moved like two planets caught in the same orbit, close enough to share light, but careful never to collide. We had built a rhythm of quiet companionship. Breakfasts shared in comfortable silence, evenings filled with laughter and conversation, mornings that began with coffee and ended with the sound of the girls' feet running through the halls. But somewhere in that rhythm, something unspoken began to shift. It wasn't sudden. It crept in slowly, disguised as familiarity, the way she'd linger in the kitchen long after dinner just to talk, or how her laughter seemed to soften when she looked at me. I caught myself noticing small things: the gentle curl of her hair when it fell loose, the warmth in her eyes when she spoke to the girls, the steady grace in her voice when she said my name. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but it did. When we finally visited Sarah's grave, the shift became impossible to ignore. The cemetery sat just outside the city, a quiet place surrounded by oak trees whose branches swayed like sentinels. The air was damp, carrying the faint smell of rain and earth. Victoria brought white roses, Sarah's favorite, and knelt by the headstone, her fingers tracing the carved letters as if touching them could bring her stepdaughter back. I stood beside her, unsure what to say. The words on the stone were simple: Sarah Morrison Blackwood, 1989 to 2022. She lived bravely, loved fiercely, and left light behind. Victoria whispered, "She would have liked you, Marcus. You were her kind of person, someone who doesn't quit." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment. "I think she'd be proud of you," I said softly. "You kept your promise." She smiled faintly, her eyes shimmering. And she gave me something I didn't know I needed. We stood there in silence for a long time, the kind of silence that didn't need filling. The rain began to fall lightly, dotting the marble with tiny pearls of water. I pulled my jacket off and draped it over her shoulders. "You'll get sick," I murmured. She looked up at me then, really looked, and for the first time, I saw the loneliness behind her strength. "I've been sick of being alone for years," she said quietly. This is different." We left the cemetery hand in hand, though neither of us acknowledged it. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, we sat by the fire again, the room dim except for the soft flicker of flame. Victoria poured us both a glass of wine, her movements uncharacteristically slow, thoughtful. "Sarah used to tell me," she began, her voice low, "that love isn't always fireworks and passion. Sometimes it's just choosing someone over and over, even when it doesn't make sense. I didn't understand that until now." I looked at her across the flickering light. "You think this us makes sense?" She smiled, just barely. "No, but it feels right." Her honesty disarmed me. For weeks I'd been trying to keep my feelings locked behind practicality, reminding myself this was a partnership, not a romance. But in that moment, I couldn't hide anymore. "I think about you," I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "Not just as my wife in name, but as someone I actually care about. You've done so much for me and the girls, and I don't know how to define what this is anymore." Victoria's eyes softened, but there was fear there too. "You should be careful, Marcus," she whispered. "Feelings complicate things." "Do you regret this?" I asked. She shook her head slowly. "No, but it scares me. I've spent so long building walls, and now you and those girls, you've torn them down without even trying. I don't know how to be needed without the fear of being left again." The room fell still. The fire cracked softly, its glow warming her face. I wanted to tell her that I wasn't going anywhere, that for the first time since Rebecca died, I'd found something that felt real again. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I reached across the space between us. She hesitated for half a second, then let her hand fall into mine. Her fingers were cool, delicate, but when they closed around mine, it felt like something fragile had finally found its place. No words, no promises, just the quiet pulse of two people who'd both lost too much finally letting themselves feel again. That night, as the fire burned low, Victoria didn't speak, and neither did I. We just sat there, her hand in mine. And for the first time, our silence didn't feel empty. It felt like the beginning of something we didn't yet have the courage to name. All families fight, but ours was born from one. It started over something small, like most real fights do. A simple suggestion, a passing comment, a few stray words that somehow detonated everything we'd been building for 8 months. "I think we should hire a housekeeper," Victoria said casually one evening as she poured herself tea. "Just part-time, someone to help with the laundry and cleaning." It was a Thursday night, ordinary, unremarkable, but her words hit me harder than they should have. I closed the dishwasher with a little more force than necessary. "You mean you think I can't handle it?" Her brow creased slightly. "That's not what I said." "Maybe not, but it's what you meant." "Marcus." Her tone carried that calm, executive steadiness she used in boardrooms, the kind that always made me feel like I was overreacting. "We both have a lot on our plates. You've gone back to work part-time, I'm traveling more, and the girls are constantly busy with school. It's just practical." I could feel something inside me start to tighten. The old, ugly mixture of pride and shame that never really went away. "I've been taking care of my own house and my daughters for years, Victoria. I don't need a stranger to do it for me." She set her cup down, her movements precise. "This isn't about need, Marcus. It's about balance. We could have more time together, as a family, if we weren't constantly buried in chores." Her logic was sound, but all I heard was pity. All I saw was a rich woman trying to fix a man who didn't fit into her world. "So that's what this is?" I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "You rescuing the poor broken veteran who can't even keep up with his own dishes?" Victoria's expression faltered, just for a moment, before she straightened, her tone turning cold. "Don't twist my words. You know that's not how I see you." I laughed bitterly. "Really? Because that's exactly what it feels like sometimes. You walk into my life with your money, your solutions, your control, and I'm supposed to just smile and say thank you?" The silence that followed was thick and dangerous. Victoria's blue eyes flashed, but when she finally spoke, her voice trembled with something deeper than anger. "Do you honestly believe that's why I married you? To control you? To feel superior?" "I don't know," I said, my voice low. "Maybe you needed to feel needed." That was the line that broke her composure. Her hands clenched at her sides. "You think this is easy for me?" she said, her voice rising for the first time since I'd known her. "You think I don't lie awake at night wondering if you and the girls even want me here, or if I'm just the rich woman who bought herself a family because she couldn't make one of her own?" The rawness in her voice caught me off guard. I opened my mouth to speak, but she kept going, years of control cracking open in seconds. "I've spent my entire life earning everything I have," she said. "Respect, power, money, and none of it means anything when I walk into this house and realize how afraid I am that one day you'll all wake up and realize you don't need me anymore." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. "Victoria," I started, but she cut me off. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "You need to hear this. You think I'm helping you out of pity? You're wrong. I'm helping you because I see you, because I admire the kind of man you are. You've survived things I couldn't even imagine, and instead of breaking, you built something beautiful. That's not charity, Marcus. That's courage." The silence that followed was different this time. Heavier, but softer too. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs, feeling the weight of her words settle deep in my chest. "I didn't mean what I said," I murmured finally. I hate feeling like I can't provide, like I'm still that guy counting change for coffee." Victoria sighed, her anger cooling into exhaustion. And I hate feeling like I have to earn my place here every single day. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The kitchen, once filled with tension, now felt like a mirror, reflecting every insecurity we'd both been hiding. Then, quietly, I said, "I'm scared too, you know. That one day you'll realize you could have had anyone, someone who actually belongs in your world." She looked at me for a long moment before walking around the table and sitting beside me. "You are my world," she said simply. That broke something in me, not in a painful way, but in the kind that lets the light in. I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "So am I," she replied softly. Then, after a pause, a small smile tugged at her lips. "Maybe it's about time we had this fight." I frowned. "Why's that?" "Because it means we're finally a real family," she said. "Real families fight. They argue, they hurt each other sometimes, but they stay. They work through it. And that's what we're doing." Her words hung in the air, warm and heavy with truth. The argument hadn't broken us. It had revealed us. That night, as I turned off the lights and walked past the girls' rooms, I realized Victoria was right. Real families aren't born from perfection. They're forged in fire. And for the first time, I believed we might actually survive it. One folder in a locked drawer destroyed everything I thought I knew. It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon. The girls were at school, Victoria was in meetings, and I was in her home office looking for their birth certificates. She'd asked me to find them for a school registration form. The top drawers held nothing unusual. Family photos, neatly labeled folders, letters, even a few old business contracts. Then I noticed it. A locked drawer. I almost ignored it. But the key sat right there in her desk tray, as if daring me to turn it. When the lock clicked open, I found a single black folder inside. Thick, marked in bold white letters. Chen Family, Confidential. My stomach tightened. At first I thought it might be something legal, maybe our marriage documents or the adoption papers. But when I opened it, the air seemed to drain from the room. Bank statements, medical records, surveillance photographs of me and the girls. There was one from before we'd ever met. Me outside the coffee shop, holding Emma's hand, my expression tired and hollow. Another of Lily walking home from school alone. Every image felt like an invasion, like someone had been watching our lives when we thought no one cared. And then I saw it. A printed psychological report. My name at the top. Pages of cold, clinical language. Subject exhibits signs of severe depression, social withdrawal, and potential suicidal ideation. Current financial stressors and isolation behaviors indicate high risk if intervention does not occur. The report was dated 2 weeks before the day Victoria happened to walk into that coffee shop. My vision blurred. The woman who'd become my wife, who'd promised honesty, partnership, and trust, had known everything before she ever shook my hand. I sat there for a long time, staring at those words, the world tilting under their weight. It wasn't fate that had brought her to me. It was planning, strategy, intervention. When I finally heard the front door open downstairs, my hands were still shaking. "Marcus?" Her voice echoed faintly up the staircase. "You home?" I couldn't answer. When she appeared in the doorway, the file lay open on the desk between us like a crime scene. For the first time since I'd met her, Victoria's face went pale. "Where did you find that?" "In your locked drawer," I said, my voice quiet but sharp. "You want to tell me why you have an entire investigation on my life?" She exhaled slowly, her composure crumbling. "Marcus, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" I snapped. "That you had me followed? That you hired someone to dig through my past like I was a suspect? That you had me psychologically evaluated by a stranger before we'd even met?" Her eyes shimmered with guilt. "You were in trouble, Marcus. You were drowning, and you didn't even see it. The investigator I hired, he saw warning signs. I just wanted to understand what you were going through before I approached you." "So you planned it," I said. "The coffee shop, The story about Sarah, all of it. The story about Sarah was real, she said quickly, stepping forward. Every word of it. I didn't plan to meet you there. I only wanted to make sure you were still alive. But when I saw you with your daughters... Her voice broke. I couldn't walk away. Her words should have comforted me, but they only made the betrayal sting sharper. So you married me out of pity? I demanded. No, she said, her voice shaking. I married you because I saw something worth saving. Because Sarah's dying wish was for me to find you, yes. But also because I couldn't bear to see another good man destroyed by circumstances beyond his control. I slammed the file shut. You didn't save me, Victoria. You manipulated me. You saw a broken man and decided to rebuild him, your way. Her expression tightened. If I hadn't stepped in, Marcus, you might not have survived long enough to hate me for it. The room fell silent, except for the faint hum of rain against the window. The truth hung between us. Heavy, unbearable, and unfixable. For the first time in a year, I couldn't look at her. I need time, I said finally, my voice low. I can't do this right now. Please don't walk away like this, she whispered. I'm not walking away, I said. I'm just moving rooms. When I left her office, I could still feel her eyes on me. A mixture of regret, fear, and something deeper I didn't have the strength to name. That night, I slept in the guest room, staring at the ceiling while the rain beat against the windows like an unrelenting truth. Somewhere down the hall, I heard her door close, soft, final, and for the first time since we'd met, I wondered if our marriage had been built not on love or even partnership, but on a lie we'd both wanted to believe. We began at a grave, and that's where we found love. 3 days had passed since I found the file. 3 nights of silence, of pretending for the girl's sake that everything was fine, while the space between us grew colder than the Seattle rain outside. I slept in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the words, severe depression, risk factors, intervention necessary. On the 4th morning, I asked her to meet me at Sarah's grave. The sky was heavy with gray clouds when we arrived. The rain was steady, not harsh, just enough to blur the edges of the world. Victoria stood beside me, dressed in a dark wool coat, her hair pulled back, her expression unreadable. The silence between us carried everything we hadn't said. Sarah's resting place was immaculate, as always. Victoria visited every week. A vase of fresh roses sat at the base of the headstone. The stone itself was simple. Sarah Morrison Blackwood, 1989-2022. She lived bravely, loved fiercely, and left light behind. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The rain soaked through my jacket, but I didn't care. I needed the cold. I needed something to ground me. Finally, I broke the silence. Tell me something, Victoria, I said quietly. If Sarah hadn't asked you to find me, if her dying wish hadn't been about me, would you have still come looking? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she crouched down and brushed the raindrops from Sarah's name, her hand trembling slightly. When she stood again, she met my eyes. And for the first time since I'd known her, she didn't hide behind poise or control. I don't know, she said softly. I'd like to tell you I would have, that I would have found you because it was the right thing to do. But the truth is, Marcus, Sarah's promise gave me permission to care again. It gave me a reason to stop drifting. Her honesty disarmed me more than any excuse ever could. So it was pity, I said, though my voice lacked its earlier edge. It was fear, she corrected gently. Fear that I'd spend the rest of my life in empty rooms, surrounded by things that didn't matter. Fear that I'd die alone, having done everything but live. I studied her face, the woman who had gone from stranger to wife, savior to something much more complicated. And me? What was I? A project? A second chance at purpose? Victoria shook her head, rain glinting in her silver hair. You were never a project. You were the first real thing in my life after Sarah died. I thought I was helping you. But it turns out you were the one who saved me." Her voice cracked on the last words, and for a moment, she looked fragile. Not the powerful businesswoman who built empires, but a woman standing in the rain, confessing her own helplessness. I took a step closer, unsure if it was forgiveness or gravity pulling me toward her. "You should have told me," I said. "I know," she whispered. "I wanted to. But how do you tell someone the truth, when the truth might destroy the only good thing you've built?" The rain fell harder, but neither of us moved. "I hated you for a moment," I admitted. "When I found that file, I felt like my whole life with you had been scripted. Like I was a name on a list, a case to be solved." Victoria nodded, eyes downcast. "You had every right to feel that way." "But then I looked at the girls," I continued, my voice softening, "at how happy they are, how much they love you, how much you've changed all of us. And I realized, it doesn't matter how it started. What matters is what we've become." Her eyes met mine again, blue and uncertain. "You mean that?" "I do," I said. "You didn't trick me, Victoria. You saved me, even if I didn't ask to be saved. And somewhere along the way, you stopped being the woman who rescued me and became the woman I trust with my life." She covered her mouth, a sob breaking free despite herself. "Marcus, I've spent so long trying to fix things, businesses, people, myself. But you never needed fixing. You just needed someone to believe you still had a future. And I wanted to be that person." For the first time in days, I stepped forward and pulled her into an embrace. She stiffened for a moment, then melted into it. The rain soaked through both our coats, cold and cleansing. "I forgive you," I murmured against her hair. "Not because you deserve it, but because I do. I'm tired of carrying anger where love should be." She pulled back slightly, her eyes shimmering through the rain. "You still love me?" I hesitated, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I finally did. "I think I've been falling for you for a long time," I said. "I just didn't have the courage to admit it." Her breath hitched, and for a heartbeat neither of us moved. The graveyard was silent except for the rain and the quiet rhythm of our breathing. Then, in a trembling voice, she whispered, "Marcus, I'm falling in love with you." The words hung between us, fragile, honest, and entirely unexpected. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I leaned forward and pressed my forehead against hers. The rain slid down our faces like tears we didn't have to hide anymore. When we finally stepped back, her confession still echoed in my chest. I didn't know what our future held, but I knew this. We hadn't just found forgiveness that day. We'd found the beginning of something real, born not from perfection, but from truth. She saved my life, but I saved hers too. 2 years later, our home didn't echo anymore. It sang. Laughter drifted down the hallways, the scent of pancakes and piano music filling the air like a hymn to everything we'd fought for. I used to wake up with worry clinging to my chest, bills, hunger, fear, but now I woke to warmth, to peace, to the sound of my daughters calling for breakfast and Victoria humming softly in the kitchen. The house that once felt like someone else's dream was now ours. The ivy-covered Tudor in Queen Anne had become the heartbeat of our little world. I'd replaced the old uncertainty with a business of my own, Chen Construction Consulting, a small firm built from the fragments of my past. Victoria had helped me set it up, of course, but not in the way she used to. Not with rescue, but with respect. She believed in me, but she let me build it with my own hands, the way she always said she believed I could. And she was right. The company thrived, but not because of her money, because of her faith. I'd found purpose again, and for the first time since my accident, I was working not out of survival, but out of passion. In the next room, Lily's piano filled the house with a soft melody. Chopin, her latest obsession. Victoria sat beside her, patient and smiling, correcting her finger positions with gentle guidance. Across the room, Emma twirled in a makeshift costume, practicing lines for her school play. Her confidence had bloomed in ways I couldn't have imagined back when life was all struggle and scarcity. Victoria turned to me with that familiar glint in her eyes. "She's getting better every day," she said of Lily. "So are you," I teased. "You used to flinch every time she hit the wrong note." She laughed, a sound that had become my favorite melody of all. We'd changed, both of us. The woman who once lived behind walls of marble and money now laughed in flour-dusted aprons and read bedtime stories with the girls sprawled across her lap. And the man who once lived with bitterness and pride had learned that letting someone in wasn't weakness. It was survival. One evening, as we all sat around the dinner table, the golden light of sunset poured through the windows. Lily was showing Victoria a new song she'd written, her small hands dancing over the piano keys, while Emma proudly displayed her painted school project. I sat there watching them, my chest tight with something I hadn't felt in years, gratitude so deep it hurt. After dinner, when the girls had gone upstairs to get ready for bed, Lily came back down holding an old photo, one of her mother, Rebecca, and me. Her eyes searched mine, serious and thoughtful. "Dad," she said softly, "do you think Mom would have liked Victoria?" Her question caught me off guard. For a moment I couldn't speak. I looked at Rebecca's smiling face in the photograph, the woman who'd given me everything. Then at Victoria, standing by the doorway, listening but pretending not to. "Yes," I said finally, my voice steady. "I think your mom would have loved her. She'd be happy that you girls are safe, loved, and laughing again. That's all she ever wanted." Lily smiled, satisfied, and hugged me before running upstairs. Victoria stepped closer, her voice quiet. "Thank you for saying that." "I didn't say it for you," I said gently. "I said it because it's true." She reached for my hand, and I saw tears shimmer in her eyes. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" I nodded. "From the coffee shop to this?" She smiled. "A family born from two promises, one made in war, one in love." That was Victoria, always able to find poetry in the wreckage. Later that night, when the house was quiet, I stood by the living room window. Outside, the garden glowed softly beneath the porch lights. Inside, I could hear faint giggles from upstairs as Victoria helped the girls settle into bed. I thought about the man I'd been, broken, lost, ready to give up, and the woman who refused to let me. She had saved my life in ways she would never fully understand. But I had saved hers too, by giving her what she'd been, missing all along: purpose, belonging, family. I looked toward the piano, where the final note of Lily's song still seemed to hang in the air, and whispered, "Thank you, Sarah, for saving my life once on the battlefield, and again in the quiet war of the heart." As I turned out the light and joined my family upstairs, I thought of the impossible chain of moments that led us here. A promise made in dying breath, a proposal born from grief, and a love that rose from ashes. And in the darkness, I whispered once more, "Thank you, Sarah, for saving me twice." Some promises change lives forever, and some stories remind us that love can be rebuilt from the ashes. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Marcus's place? And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories that prove love doesn't always start with, "I love you." Sometimes it begins with, "I'll help you."